Tarek Ayoub, known across Sydney's underworld as the Angel of Death, lived a life cloaked in mystery, intimidation, and lethal reputation. Operating in the shadows of gang alliances, he was feared not for his noise, but for his silence, the kind that usually came before a body dropped. As a suspected hitman linked to multiple unsolved killings, Tarek navigated the dangerous terrain of Sydney's gang wars with strategic ruthlessness. His death in August 2024 was not just another gangland execution, it was a calculated message delivered in gunfire that shook the city and reignited long-standing tensions between rival criminal networks. Tarek Ayoub was born and raised in Yagoona, a suburb in Sydney's southwest long associated with working-class roots and, in some pockets, criminal influence. Not much is known about Tarek's formative years, but by his late teens, he had already begun associating with individuals tied to Sydney's criminal underworld. In a city where gang allegiances shift with profit and power, Tarek proved himself uniquely capable of operating across rival lines. Unlike many of his peers who pledged loyalty to a single gang, Tarek was a freelancer of violence. He was linked to the Brothers for Life gang, known for its brutal internal warfare, as well as the Ahmads and the Comanchero MC. There were even whispers of connections with the Hauchar network. Rather than being bound by one patch or family, Tarek forged a reputation for loyalty to one principle only: the job. If someone needed a hit arranged, a debt collected, or a message sent, Tarek was the man to call. Over the years, his reputation evolved from feared enforcer to something more chilling. It wasn't long before he was being quietly referred to by a title that would define his legacy: the Angel of Death. The nickname was not one he gave himself, it was earned, whispered through corridors of fear and respect. Those in Sydney's criminal world spoke of Tarek as the man you didn't want to owe or cross. When he appeared, it often meant someone else would soon disappear. Tarek's name was linked to several gangland murders, though police never formally charged him. Among the most high-profile cases was the 2017 murder of 15-year-old Braden Dillon. The teenager was shot in the head while asleep in his bed, an act of cold, deliberate vengeance believed to be tied to feuds between criminal networks. While Tarek was not named as the gunman, investigators believed he may have played a significant role in organising the hit. His alleged involvement in violent crimes went beyond single acts. Police suspected he was connected to a string of retributive attacks, each one tied to the shifting alliances and betrayals that defined Sydney's gang scene. Yet, despite intense surveillance and repeated questioning, Tarek remained elusive. He avoided conviction, kept his movements unpredictable, and never stayed in one place for too long. This ability to evade capture only heightened his legend. It also built resentment among rival gangs, some of whom believed Tarek had become a liability, someone who knew too much, someone who could no longer be trusted. In the early hours of August 26th, 2024, that legend met its violent end. At around 3:30 AM, Tarek was leaving a woman's apartment on Harold Street in Parramatta when two masked gunmen stepped out of the shadows. What followed was a brutal execution. Over 30 bullets were fired at close range. The ambush was swift, calculated and final. Tarek collapsed near his car, shot multiple times. He died at the scene before paramedics could intervene. The attackers fled in a stolen black Audi SQ, which was later found torched in nearby Granville, a classic underworld tactic used to destroy forensic evidence. Minutes later, witnesses reported seeing a white SUV leaving the area, believed to be the second getaway car. The message was unmistakable. This was no heat-of-the-moment attack, it was a coordinated hit. The volume of gunfire, the tactical escape plan, and the choice of location all pointed to an execution carried out by professionals. This was a message to anyone still loyal to Tarek, or anyone else who might have crossed the same hidden line. New South Wales Police quickly launched Strikeforce Juno to investigate the murder. More than 30 detectives, forensic experts, and gang intelligence officers were deployed to gather evidence and unravel the mystery behind Tarek's killing. Homicide Squad commander Danny Doherty described the murder as a targeted and deliberate act, confirming Tarek's long-standing status as a well-known criminal identity with a history of violence. Police confirmed that Tarek had been under active surveillance for months prior to his death. He had been considered a person of interest in multiple unsolved murders and organised crime operations. His movements were unpredictable, and detectives were aware that he was drifting between groups, a tactic that earned him few allies and many enemies. In their public statements, investigators noted that Tarek lived by the sword and died by the sword, but the hunt for his killers proved more difficult. The burnt getaway vehicle yielded no immediate clues, and the attackers' identities remain unknown. Despite public appeals for dashcam footage and CCTV from Harold Street and surrounding suburbs, no arrests have yet been made. Speculation about who ordered Tarek's murder has divided Sydney's underworld and law enforcement alike. Theories abound. Some point to members of the Comanchero who may have viewed Tarek as a rogue element threatening their internal stability. Others believe the Ahmads or the Houchars may have ordered the hit in response to a past betrayal or failed negotiation. One widely held theory suggests Tarek had been playing too many sides for too long. His connections across rival crews gave him access to sensitive information, too much information according to some sources. He was a man who operated independently in a world where loyalty is currency. Once that currency loses value, the consequences are deadly. Underworld figures told reporters that Tarek's murder was inevitable. One source remarked that everyone liked having him around until they didn't. Others pointed out that Tarek had been named in too many police briefings, that his name was now a liability not only to himself, but to anyone associated with him. Tarek's murder marked the first gangland execution in Sydney in several months. It reignited fears of a tit-for-tat killing cycle that has plagued the city's underworld for over a decade. Police increased patrols across known gang hotspots and boosted intelligence gathering operations. The goal was clear: prevent a retaliation that could spiral into another wave of bloodshed. Strike Force Juno remained active in the months that followed, combing through surveillance data, questioning associates, and monitoring rival groups for signs of escalation. But in a world where silence is survival and revenge is tradition, few were willing to talk. The community around Tarek's former strongholds remained quiet, watching, waiting, perhaps preparing. To date, no suspects have been charged with Tarek's murder. Investigators maintain that the case remains a top priority. For many in Sydney's underworld, however, justice in the courts is unlikely. The streets have their own laws, and the Angel of Death's legacy may be written not in files or courtrooms, but in whatever comes next. Tarek Ayoub was a figure of shadows, a man whose name sparked fear, whose movements unsettled rivals, and whose actions helped shape Sydney's criminal landscape. His rise to power came through ruthless efficiency and his ability to navigate the city's ever-shifting gang alliances. But that same versatility also bred mistrust. By the time of his death, Tarek had become a lone figure, feared, isolated, and ultimately expendable. His murder was not a surprise, it was expected. The only question had been when. Tarek lived by a simple code: loyalty to no one, survival above all. In the end, it wasn't enough. In a world where trust is fragile and secrets are currency, the Angel of Death became his own final victim. His story is a reminder of the cold realities of organised crime, where notoriety is earned with blood, alliances are temporary, and even the most feared can be brought down in a blaze of gunfire. This brings us to the end of the case. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you want more stories from the Australian underworld, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps me out and helps the channel grow. Till next time, take care.